Obsidian is a legendary name within the gaming industry, so you would think every single title they would release would be a smashing success, but it looks like Avowed may be struggling because so far the Steam chart numbers are abysmal. Before I get into the topic though, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, there is a lot to this story, right? Leading up to release, there was so much controversy because of Matt Hansen, the art director. His posts about wanting to kick crusty white dudes out of the video game industry were unearthed. That made him look terrible. Then, of course, Elon Musk was brought into the situation, and Matt Hansen had said, oh, if the pronouns within the game piss you off, there's going to be a lot more in this game that you are going to hate. And then, of course, the game released. It was actually a surprise to people when we saw that the things like pronouns on the character sheet were optional. There are some people who really like that, some people who were still very skeptical of the game, and I've played many hours of it. I think I'm on hour like 14 at this point, 15 perhaps. Either way, I've played a lot so far, and it is just a very mid game. I don't think that it is the like wokest game I've ever played, that's for sure, comparing it to like Veilguard and Dustborn, but it really has nothing special about it. The world feels very watered down. It really does not feel like the Pillars of Eternity world. You can't do things like steal, and you can't attack NPCs. You can't do things that you would expect to be able to do. I mean, there were even, very lackluster customization options. You can't even pick height. There's no muscle sliders to make your character more buff or not. You can't choose, the size of your character's breasts or their butt, or in the male case, the bulge. Like, there's really not a lot of customization. There's no romance. It just feels like a very watered down experience, in my opinion. And clearly, there are a lot of other people who also think that, given it's not doing particularly well on Steam right now. So, Avowed is a massive disappointment for Microsoft and Obsidian. This is a Smash JT article. Avowed has officially released to all players following its 5-day early access period, and the numbers are painting a pretty grim picture. With only around 15,000 players on Steam at launch, Avowed is looking more and more like it is already an undeniable flop. Now, of course, going over to SteamDB and refreshing, as of right now, there are 17,890 players in game, and the 24-hour peak is 17,171, which, yes, is very terrible. Now, of course, it is very important to point out that this is on Game Pass day one, so there are, I'm sure, a hell of a lot of people playing it through Game Pass who have decided they are not going to just swipe their credit card and outright buy it, but there have been many launches that have been on a platform like Steam, and it's also had a Game Pass release day one, and those games did just fine. I'm just going to use Starfield as an example because I think that it speaks for itself. This was a day one Game Pass launch, and as you can see, the all-time peak on Steam at release was 330,000 people, which is an insane number. Now, of course, this was supposed to be the next massive game. It was supposed to be a Cyberpunk. It was supposed to be a Skyrim. It was supposed to be a GTA-sized event, and it did really great at release, as you can see. Now, we do know that they had said that it had hit 11 million players in total, and that was a couple of months after release, and that does include Game Pass numbers, but it stood on its own on Steam. And then you go and you look at something like Avowed, which so far has only a 17,000 all-time peak, which is just terrible. Now, heading back over to the article, Smash also points out the numbers of something like Dragon Age the Veilguard. To put this all into perspective, that's about 8 times less players than the disastrous Dragon Age the Veilguard saw at peak, and while the weekend hasn't come yet and the numbers will still most likely rise from here, many folks are expecting Avowed to not surpass a peak of 30,000 concurrent all-time player count, which is awful. I expected it to hit like 100,000 players. I didn't expect it to hit like 200 or 300,000 like Starfield, but I expected it to still be able to hold its own, and it doesn't even look like it's going to come close to Veilguard, which was, yes, a financial failure. So how are we supposed to sit here and say, oh, Avowed has a chance, Avowed has a chance? We know that Game Pass is not good for developers, and they still expect people to show up and swipe their credit card to buy the game off of Game Pass. They do still expect to gain a lot of sales via platforms like Steam, and people who don't pay for Game Pass who just want to buy one game maybe a week or one game a month or something like that. So seeing again 17,000 players is not good for them. Smash also brings up Game Pass, saying one of the biggest culprits behind this failure is the Game Pass model itself. While the service provides easy access to some new titles for subscribers, it is at the same time also killing any sense of urgency or value in actually purchasing games in the first place. Why spend $70 or more in a game after taxes when you can just play it for free with a lower price subscription? Now, I always say this, I think that Game Pass is very good for gamers because you can test a game and you're not investing in it, right? I would regret playing Avowed or buying Avowed if I was not a content creator. Now, of course, I stream all of these games because I think it's only fair because I talk about them and I want to review them and form my own opinions on them because I'm talking about them. But if I was an average gamer and I had spent $70 on Avowed, I would be pissed. It is just not a good game. Same with, a title like Starfield. I know a lot of people did not like Starfield, completely understandable. I thought it was okay. I thought it had quite a bit going for it, but it definitely was not a 10 out of 10 experience. And if I had spent a lot of money on it, I would be pissed. And I do think that Game Pass is a good way for gamers to test out games. And then if they end up loving them, they can buy them independently. But I just do not think that this is a subscription model or service that is good for business. They can try to spin it as a positive all they want, but we do know that it is really the silent killer of game sales. And now they've probably found themselves in the middle of a predicament where it's not making them money, but they've already promoted it so much that they have to just continue to double down on it. And even when we take a look at other Obsidian games that are on Steam, they've done significantly better. If you look over on the right-hand side at the all-time peak, Fallout New Vegas, 51,000 players, and in-game right now is 3,400. Pillars of Eternity, 41,000. South Park, The Stick of Truth, 34,000. Grounded, 32,000. This was also Game Pass Day 1. Pillars of Eternity 2, 22,000. The Outer Worlds, 20,000. So Avowed is not even close to the top spot. We're talking about it hitting 8th place, so they're probably panicking right now. If they will admit that, they won't, of course. They'll just try to spin this as a positive thing because, oh my god, there's so many people playing it on Game Pass. But again, they do need sales aside from people playing a title on Game Pass, and it just doesn't look like that's going to happen for them. It goes on to say, had Avowed been released back in 2010 or so as the successor to Oblivion, gamers would have celebrated it as an instant classic, but in 2025, the game feels by many to be outdated and uninspired. While it borrows elements from Skyrim, it fails to deliver the same level of immersion and depth, which I totally and completely agree with. I don't think that it is a 2 out of 10 game, but at the same time, I would rather go back and play something like Skyrim. And if you compare it to something like Dragon Age the Veilguard, which recently came out, they visually look very similar and they also kind of play similarly, but they all suffer from the same problem where they do not have compelling storytelling. Some of the mechanics are kind of wonky and it's very buggy and glitchy. I know the director for Avowed had recently come out and said, oh, it's going to be janky at release, but that just means that developers had fun, and with creativity comes a bit of jank, which is fucking ridiculous when you expect us to swipe our credit card on a product. If I wanted to be a beta tester, I would be one. Gamers shouldn't be beta testers, though. These games all have problems. They are all buggy and broken in some way, shape, or form. They lack compelling storytelling and characters. And yeah, if this had come out in 2010, I'm sure people would have found a lot of enjoyment out of it, but now it does just feel very outdated and you could play significantly better games for a fraction of the price. So yeah, as of right now, things are not looking particularly positive when it comes to Avowed. I will be keeping my eye on this and I am streaming a full playthrough. So far, I am very unimpressed. It's painfully mid, and I don't think that this is just the smashing success that Obsidian and Microsoft were expecting it to be. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.